Who wants to get chickens but is trying to do research and just isn't ready yet? Any hands? Well, hopefully this talk will give you the confidence you need to get started with chickens. People keep chickens for a number of reasons. Any idea why people keep chickens? Anyone want to? For the eggs. Anyone else?
For the meat.
For the meat?
Chicken TV.
Chicken TV. What's chicken TV?
Entertainment.
Oh, entertainment. Oh, yes. Okay. Yes. For the entertainment value, chickens are wonderful pets.
For the leftovers from the children.
Beg your pardon? For the leftovers.
Leftovers from the
Another fantastic reason to keep chickens.
compost.
Compost, another nice reason. So chickens are fantastic compost assistants. Companions. Lovely. There's many reasons people keep chickens.
Emotional support chickens.
Emotional support chickens.
Alarm clock every morning.
Oh, so you're talking about roosters, eh? Yeah. Okay.
Well, not mine. Mine is 2 o'clock in the morning.
Guys, there's so many reasons to keep chickens, and everyone will have a different reason. We're going to be talking today about why people keep chickens. We're touching on that now. What you need, what chickens need, what you need to get started, taking the plunge, getting going with chickens, and then some strategies for success. We'll come back to the goals, why people are doing it. I don't know, what's the price of eggs nowadays? Anyone knows what it costs a dozen eggs in the store? A tray of eggs, 30 eggs.
30 is 95.
95 Rand. So that's over 3 Rand an egg. Right, keeping chickens yourself, feeding them exclusively layer pellets, which you have to buy. You can feed your chickens for around 2 Rand, 1 Rand 80 to 2 Rand an egg if there's no other input. If you're giving them kitchen scraps and other things, you can drop that, the feed cost input. If you're free ranging them, it further drops your input. But the cost of eggs is exorbitant, knowing that most of them, the trays of eggs you're getting, thanks James, are coming from factory farms. They're coming from battery cages. Farms where chickens get a glimpse of sunlight one day of their lives. And they never see grass, they never dust bath. They're full of antibiotics. They eat grain predominantly, as well as GMO soy, GMO corn. It's not a great life. And that's the eggs that we eat, well, most people eat because they don't have a choice, or because they haven't realized that they have a choice. Most people have a choice. There's very few people who just physically can't keep chickens because they live in a flat, or they have very strict complex rules that they can't have a chicken. Johannesburg metropolitan area and Ekurhuleni allow 10 birds for people in their private residence or yard. And they don't stipulate that you can't have a rooster. Your neighbors might have an issue with a rooster. Anyone keeping a rooster in town? In town. How many roosters have you got?
Yeah, I was gifted the the mother with the chicks.
Yes.
Beautiful Venda rooster this big.
Yeah?
I've actually made a plan with that.
Okay, what plan have you made?
I bought a big second-hand dog house.
Yes?
Covering on the inside, I actually geeked out and put a solar door in for him.
Oh, yes.
So we put him in there at night, and it literally takes the sound volume down half.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So we're just going to cover that in strategies for success. But in town, you can keep a rooster. And if you have neighbors that complain, simply restricting the rooster's head or height can restrict their crowing volume. A rooster that's, if you take a milk crate, a plastic crate box about so tall, about 40 centimeters high, and you put that over the rooster overnight, he's going to be sleeping at night, he's on the ground, he's confined, but he's got good ventilation through the holes in the crate. You would put a brick or some kind of weight on top, and when he tries to crow, he can talk, but he can't lift his head, he can't open his lungs and give a proud crow. Limiting the rooster in that way can reduce the volume of the noise, the issue with the neighbors, so it enables you to keep a rooster in town if you want to. People keep chickens because they like fresh eggs. They like eggs on demand. When they need eggs, they don't have to make a plan to go to the store on Saturday morning. They feel like eggs, they weren't planning it. They can go out and collect eggs. They know the quality of the eggs that they're getting. They know how old the eggs are that they're eating. There's something really different about a fresh egg when you fry it in the pan versus an egg that you break it in the pan and everything just runs. You can tell the egg is old, but what choice do you have? You have a choice if you have your own birds. You can collect the eggs, mark the eggs. You also know the nutritional value. You know that your chicken has been fed organic kitchen scraps. It's been fed food from your garden without pesticides. You'll see the difference in the quality of the egg when you're feeding the chicken a diverse diet. I spoke about layer pellets and the cost of that, but a chicken eating a diverse diet of greens and carrot peels and leftover cooked rice, just a diverse diet is going to have a nutritionally denser egg with a different flavor profile, and it's going to be darker in color. It's going to be a better experience. People also keep chickens for pest control. Some people keep them around their vegetable gardens. You might have seen on Facebook, or Pinterest or Instagram, people who make hoop tunnels around their vegetable garden. The chickens have their path set out. And that's actually a nice idea for lawn crickets, grasshoppers, other insects that the chickens will predate on, and which it creates a small barrier around your garden. It's a nice idea. We don't do ducks. We used to keep Indian runner ducks at Livingseeds Hatchery. The biggest reason why we don't anymore is because ducks can be asymptomatic carriers of avian influenza. Bird flu was a big problem last year. It drove the chicken price, the egg price through the roof. People were paying 200 Rand for a tray of eggs. There were shortages in the stores. Avian influenza can be a big problem. Ducks can be asymptomatic carriers. As much as they eat slugs and snails, we no longer carry ducks. Anyone who's doing so is doing so, realizing that there's a risk involved. Another excellent benefit for chickens and pest control is for controlling fruit fly, pumpkin fly, false codling moth. Those are prevalent pests in summer for people who have fruit trees and orchards. Specifically, they've got orchard here, some 20 trees, and the fruit flies and pumpkin flies, he'll talk about controls in terms of traps and sprays and so on for pests and diseases later in his next talk. However, chickens kept underneath and amongst an orchard will scratch in the soil and find the false codling moth pupa that are covered in sand. We can't see it, but the chickens find it and eat it. And they do a good work in protecting your fruit crop. Also, any pumpkin squash, vegetables that have been stung or laid eggs by a pumpkin fly, you can feed it to your chickens, and that way it breaks the life cycle of the pumpkin fly. If you just leave it or throw it in the compost pile, realistically, and what's going to happen is they're going to produce more pumpkin flies and more fruit flies and more false codling moth. And you either leaving the fruit on the floor, feed the pest, or you have to do something to kill the pest in that fruit, because all of these is an issue of being stung or an egg laid in the fruit. So chickens are excellent for pest control and helping to manage those pests. Everyone has a different approach. Some people want for meat, some people for eggs, some for self-sufficiency. Some, in case of a disaster where food is short, they want to have chicken to eat and eggs to eat as well. Some people will want to create a breed or breed chickens that will forage and free range on their plot, scratching the manure, eating the fly larvae, keeping the pest load down, provide some eggs. You eat a chicken or a rooster on occasion. Everyone's going to have a different goal. And what's really cool about Livingseeds Hatchery, bit of self-promotion here, we have over 30 breeds of heritage poultry that we supply, each with unique traits, pros and cons, different reasons to keep them, different goals that they will help you achieve. And what's nice is that with all these different options, we can tailor a solution to help you achieve your goals. We'll talk more about goals shortly. I'm going on now to taking the plunge. Hands up who wants to keep chickens again, but hasn't yet. Okay, why haven't you started with chickens, ma'am? Lady in front of you. They're too small.
I mean the yard.
Oh, the yard is too small. So you want to keep chickens, but you feel your space is not adequate. Anyone else? Different reason? Why haven't you got chickens yet, ma'am? Young lady, I should say.
We're only moving to our plot in November.
Timing as well. Yeah. Any other reasons? Any other hesitancies or reasons not to keep chickens yet?
Logistics around other pets, like dogs and
Logistics around other pets, okay. And you, ma'am?
I haven't checked with my municipality if I can have.
Okay. So those bylaws should be available online, and if they're not, you can go to your civic centre or municipality offices to find out about the bylaws if you're allowed. But you don't want to get yourself in trouble unnecessarily. Although a lot of South Africans will just get chickens and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know." Oh, your hands up, eh? Is that you guys? Yeah.
And worried about the plants.
Worried about the plants. Okay, we'll talk about that. Yes. Last point. Yes, ma'am. Rats. Are you hesitant because you're worried about having rats, or you have rats? Okay. Cool. So I should tackle most of those now in taking the plunge, in terms of security, in terms of dogs, in terms of fencing for your garden, in terms of rats. If there's anything else we don't cover, there'll be time for questions after. And then the whole afternoon will be, or the whole day will be here to talk about chickens with you guys as well. Okay, so chickens have a few basic needs. I'll run through them for you. They need food. That's a shock, eh? Chickens need to eat. They need water. They need shelter, they need dust, and they need light. Those are the 5 most important things you have to have and have to really consider before taking the plunge.
Can you just say it again?
Okay, that's sure. They need food, water, shelter, dust, and light. Okay. Cool. We'll start with water. A simple thing. Almost all life on this planet requires water. In fact, I'm not aware of any that doesn't. So all life needs water, and chickens are no different. They need clean water, they need cool water, and ideally that water should be secure from any contaminants. Now, clean meaning free from dirt, feces, algae, contaminants meaning bacteria, disease, fungus. We need to keep them in an environment that's conducive to their health. So clean water, there's a couple ways to do that. We have, and many people will, gravity water drinkers, which can hold the volume of, this one holds 3 liters. We've got some that hold 12 liters, and you fill it up with cool water, upside down. You pop the tray on, and the vacuum that's created through the water and airlock will prevent it from all draining out. The chicken will drink from this for a few hours, a few days, depending on how many birds you have and the volume of the water. Sunlight will cause algae to grow in the water. Even the municipal water with chlorine in it, sunlight will volatilize or denature the chlorine, and over time algae will start to grow as well. One of the strategies for success to have clean water all the time with minimal effort is what we do with drinking nipples. We use a cistern of 100 liters of water with taps, for water coming in, water coming out. Then each cage has a tap to isolate. But a drinking nipple will allow the gravity fed system to allow water. As the chicken agitates the drinking nipple, water comes out and they drink that water. And the cup catches any drippage. It's water efficient, it's effort efficient, it's sanitary, so there's far less algae and bacteria build up. But an important thing to consider with the water is wild birds. Who's got chickens and has wild birds coming to drink and eat from the chicken sources? Anyone? So wild birds are disease vectors. They will bring disease to your garden, your chicken sanctuary, and those diseases often can be harmful to the chickens. So bird flu, avian influenza, coccidiosis, fowl pox, respiratory issues like infectious bronchitis, those can all be introduced to a perfectly healthy flock through wild birds. So we highly recommend limiting the exposure of your birds to wild birds. And I'm touching on this with water, but the same applies when we talk about food. And shelter. Let's go to shelter next. Keeping out wild birds is a primary concern of us here at Livingseeds. Where wild birds bring disease causes health issues in the birds. We can't sell unhealthy birds. We don't want the birds to suffer. We don't want the birds to die. We want everything to run well. So to minimize the instance of illness, we've got the weld mesh fencing. Not only does it look nice, not only is it aesthetic, but it actually keeps out all but the smallest wild birds. And the young babies or the birds over winter that have lost weight do try to get in. Every morning if there's a bird in, we make it top priority to get those birds out. We also have shade netting on top of the chicken coops. And that's not for the chickens to have shade, that's to limit wild bird contamination. Wild birds flying overhead, landing on the chicken cages, and they're leaving deposits constantly. And those deposits may or may not contain a virus or bacteria that's harmful to the chickens. But catching it with a shade net allows the sun to sterilize it. It just bakes in the sun, and as the droppings are sterilized by the sun, the wind also blows them off, and that helps limit contamination of the chicken coops. That's talking about shelter. While talking about shelter or security, dogs that are untrained and hunters by nature may well be a threat to your chickens. And it's in your best interest and it's your responsibility to keep your chickens safe. Some strategies for doing that include the chicken tractors. If you are behind the first set of cages here, clucking and palace, we have some mobile chicken tractors. They move onto fresh grass every day. They're designed for up to 4 leghorn hens, small birds, 3 of anything larger, or half a dozen little bantams. And we use them for the bantams. It's space efficient. They move onto fresh grass every day. And that limits wild birds from getting in there to eat the food and to drink the water. It keeps them safe from any predators. In the area there are mongoose, genets, I think they're jackals. I know Courtney was saying there were jackals in the area. They're birds of prey. And although because they're up near where there's such a high volume of traffic of people, we don't see a lot of those predators, keeping the birds safe is very important. So you can, by all means, take photographs of our way of doing things with the tractors and build your own. You can make any number of variations to it to make it work. So chickens do need to be kept safe. A lot of dogs though, including hunters like Jack Russells and Ridgebacks and Rottweilers, they can be trained. It depends on the discipline of the dog and the nature of the dog. Dogs that are raised with a lot of different pets like cats and chickens and so on tend to understand that they're not food and they're not for playing with. But a dog's nature is to chase something if it runs. So it does depend. It's a case by case. A secure residence for your chickens will go a long way in keeping them safe. Rats. Someone asked about rats or said that's a bit of a concern, a barrier to starting with chickens. This fencing will keep out all but little rats and maybe field mice that will want to get in to eat the chicken food. Chickens, large birds, not the bantams, but the Australorps and the Boschvelders will eat the small mice and rats. They're omnivorous and they will predate on anything small enough to fit in their mouth. It's not a major concern, but having cats or dogs around can help limit the rat population in your area. And it's very important that when you have chicken food, you keep it in a rat-proof storage vessel. We sold out of these yesterday. This is the last one I've kept hang on for demonstration purposes. But we do supply rat-proof feed bins that'll make it much easier to keep your chickens without introducing a rodent infestation at the same time. We do have some of the larger ones left, but this is the last one of these smaller ones, which is for sale. Anyone can get it after the fact.
Auction it.
No, we won't auction it. We keep our prices constant, even when the supply is low. Shelter. If there's any questions on shelter, we'll take questions shortly. I want to move on to food. Feed is probably the place where people skimp the most. Customers come through, they see our chickens, they see that the black copper Morans are quite an expensive bird. They think, great, I'm going to start with 2 of those. I'm going to make money. And there's a lot more that goes into raising chickens for profit or as a business than simply buying some and it's money in the bank. But one of the ways they shoot themselves in the foot is by skimping on the food. If you're feeding your chickens fowl mix, chick, crushed fowl, mixed fowl, which you can get from agricultural feed stores, you get it from Checkers and Pick and Pay. That fowl mix is predominantly maize, GMO maize, sorghum, and sunflower seeds. That's the bulk of that chicken food. And unfortunately, that chicken food is the equivalent of us eating Doritos and Pringles. It's carbohydrates and fats. There's not enough in there to sustain a chicken and keep it in good health. If we just eat chips, as tasty as some chips are, and as many flavors as they come in, we are not going to live our best lives. We're going to be tired. We're going to have health conditions. We need a balanced diet, and so do the chickens. So we recommend using a nutritionally balanced chicken food as the primary food source for your chickens, especially if you're keeping them in confinement and they're not able to spend all day on the plot, in the veld, foraging. For the best results, use the right food for the chickens. We supply chicken food and recommend that our customers, if they're going to buy bulk chicken food, we use the high performance feeds, layer elite pellets for the layers, the pullet developer for the young birds. We start them off with grower mash. So the young chicks, the babies from day old, they'll eat grower mash until they reach about 8 weeks of age, where they're able to eat grower pellets. We start them off with feed trays like so. We fill the tray with the grower mash. We put some grit on. Grit's important for young chickens. They need the roughage to help them grind up the food in their crops. And from day one, they get the grower mash. Their little beaks, in their heads, they poke it through and they'll scratch and they'll eat what they need. When they get to about 8 weeks, they're actually large enough to consume the pellets. Grower pellets. Can anyone guess the difference between grower pellets and grower mash? Big pardon?
Just fine.
It's just the method of delivery. The pellets are compressed, and what makes that really great is that if they spill, because chickens would naturally forage and scratch in the soil and in the mulch, and that's where they look for their seed, their insects, and all their food. So as they scratch, they would forage for food. And they do the same thing when the whole food vessel contains only a balanced diet. They're looking for the choice pellets. So they'll scratch out half a kilo of pellets looking for that one that really looks good. So what we do is we then are able to block the feeders. If you look at the way we've set up our gutted down pipes and the open feeders for them, we block it with a cap, and all the pellets on the ground are still available to them. So they're able to scratch in the soil and find the pellets and eat it. So we really reduce the waste. If we were feeding layer or grower mash to the older birds, a lot of that mash would just disappear into the bedding, whether you're using wood shavings or on concrete or on river sand. So we recommend pellets. We recommend doing things with a nutritionally balanced diet. To try and create a from scratch diet for your chickens is a large undertaking, with wheat and soy and different minerals that you'd have to add in. Diatomaceous earth has also been added into here to help with the growth, organic supplements. So to do it yourself is a pain, but if someone was desperately keen to do it themselves, we've got some resources we can assist with, but we recommend and we use the pellets. We also really recommend feeding the chickens kitchen scraps, any cuttings from the garden, carrot tops, any beetroot that's gone to seed, radishes. We regularly grow radishes to demonstrate to our customers the different radishes we grow. Not many of the staff actually take home radishes to eat, and our customers will try one or two. So a lot of the radishes end up feeding the chickens, and they really enjoy it. The more diverse their diet, the better the flavor profile and nutrient profile of the eggs that you'll be eating. So we really recommend that. Chickens who are foraging and free ranging for most of the day will end up having a lower impact on your feed costs. Well, rather, the feed cost will be less because they're able to source their own food, especially if there's space to do so. Insects, grain, any plant material. It makes feeding them a lot less expensive. Those who are not able to, you're not able to. Supplement it from the garden. Another excellent thing, an excellent strategy for success with chickens is to keep chickens in an enclosure and put your compost heap in there. So all your kitchen scraps, leftovers from the bra, the meat, the salad, goes in the compost. The chickens can scratch in it. They can eat any fly larvae that grows. They can turn your compost. They're dropping manure on your compost, high in ammonia and nitrogen. So they're making good quality compost for you and feeding themselves. In Belgium, there was a city, I forget the name of the city, that had a community project where they locally had high levels of organic matter going to their landfill sites and their refuse processing sites. And they developed this project. They offered chickens to families in the city, and they offered them 3 chickens under condition that they wouldn't eat them, slaughter them, sell them, or give them away in the first year. And what happened is that people fed their chickens on the kitchen scraps, and there was such a significant reduction in organic matter being sent to the dumps that other cities have started doing the same thing, either giving away free chickens or subsidizing chickens so people can keep their chickens. And it became so popular because people were having fresh, free range, organic eggs at home at low to no cost, because the chickens were able to. 3 chickens can basically scratch a good living and produce eggs off an average family of 4's kitchen scraps, as well as a compost heap. So that's what the principle that guided that project. If there are any questions about food, I'll take questions shortly. The next thing to talk about is dust baths. Chickens don't water bath like other birds in the bird bath. They actually they scratch in the dirt, and if chickens in our tractors are left on this grass for more than a day, they dig holes. They scratch holes in the earth so that they can dust bath. They make the soil loose. Dust enables them to bath, to shake the soil and small rocks and pebbles all through their feathers, and it dislodges any old skin, any dander, any old feathers, and it helps them to just be refreshed. It's like when we have a hot shower and we feel clean. That's what a chicken feels after a dust bath. So chickens need that for their health, because if there's a buildup of that dander, old feathers, and dust, they would need to dislodge that, or that can become a breeding place for mites and chicken mites and fleas and that sort of thing. So dust is very important for the chickens. And the last thing, it's not a big topic, it's just the fact that chickens need light. Chickens need light to produce eggs. Chickens need 14 to 16 hours of daylight, good quality light, whether it's synthetic through a globe or whether it's actual daylight, in order for their hormonal system to produce eggs. It stimulates the hormones in the brain to produce eggs. So in the northern hemisphere, not here, it's dark for so much of winter, and it's not conducive for them to reproduce. So their body shuts down the egg production. And when the daylight lengthens in summer, and it's all of a sudden that the weather is warmer, there's food available, they can breed, they start producing eggs. We in this country are blessed to we don't have conditions like that. Most of the breeds will lay throughout the year. They will molt from their second winter onwards, which is a period where they'll lose most of their feathers and regrow them. During that time, they start laying eggs, but it's usually 4 to 6 weeks, but it differs breed to breed when that'll happen. But lighting is very important. People are keeping chickens in rooms. And there's reasons for keeping chickens in a warehouse or in a room. It's not our preferred way of doing it. Chickens thrive in natural sunlight and being able to forage in free range. But if you are keeping chickens indoors, be aware that they require lighting. And the way that you do the lighting is very important, because artificial lighting can cause stress in chickens. That can cause them to attack each other and eat each other. It's not actually ideal. Who wants to get chickens but is trying to do research and just isn't ready yet? Any hands? Well, hopefully this talk will give you the confidence you need to get started with chickens. People keep chickens for a number of reasons. But there's ways to deal with it, and there's strategies we can discuss. Not what I want to talk about today, keeping chickens that way. We're going to talk about keeping chickens so the chickens are healthy and happy. All right. The last thing on light, and I'll come back to our big chicken cages, Cluckingham Palace, New York City, and the new Acropolis that's being put up. Sunlight is essential for our system because it is an amazing disinfectant. The UV light will bleach and kill a lot of the pathogens, bacteria, viruses that's exposed to sunlight. So you can overfeed a chicken, especially if you're feeding the chicken chips. And I say chips, I mean the fowl mix, the grain. You can have fat chickens. Fat chickens don't lay eggs. They have other health issues. They struggle to walk. You physically can make a chicken fat like any other animal. Generally speaking, most of the standard sized chickens, not the bantams, not the very big chickens, we eat about 120 grams of food each day. And I say food, I'm talking layer pellets. It's an average estimate for most of the standard sized breeds. And for those, I'm talking Easter eggers, Sussex, Rhode Islands, Morans, most of those standard sized chickens. Now, I should have talked about this earlier. Birds like the black Australorps will eat almost double what birds like the white leghorn will eat. The white leghorn will eat maybe 70 to 80 grams of pellets a day. The Australorp will eat 150, 160 grams of food per day. So we feed ad lib on the nutritionally balanced layer pellets. They can have as much as they want. They don't get fat, they lay eggs, they get everything they need there. Calcium, protein, carbohydrates, all the trace minerals. Where they'll get fat is the snacks, the extra seeds. We do also give our chickens supplements in their food. Should have mentioned that in the food section. We give them dried crushed chilies from the excess from the seed production here on the farm. We dry out the chili flesh, we crush it and give it to them in their food. We also give them dried flake kelp, which is an amazing nutrient mineral source. We give them biochar. I think that's it. The linseeds, sunflower seeds, whole wheat. We give them as a treat and a bit of a boost for folic acid, which is good for their feathers and good for their overall health. So we supplement and treat with those other things, but as a daily ration, the layer pellets. We also give them a salad from the garden 2-3 times a week, where we're removing any tired leaves, removing any crops that have gone to flower that shouldn't have, or that they're done. We'll feed it to the chickens.
You're giving them, say, your kitchen scraps.
Yes.
Are you still going to give them this much food, or would you reduce that?
So we would ad lib the layer pellets and then give them kitchen scraps as well. If you wanted to run it lean and force them, say that they're turning their nose up at your kitchen scraps. Say they lived a pampered life and you've bought the chickens from wherever. I mean, for us, they're used to eating the pellets. They may prefer to eat the pellets rather than potato peels. They don't get potato peels. They get leaves and other things from the garden. So if you want them to learn potato peels, carrot peels, or anything they're not used to, say you raise your own chickens or get them from a neighbor, what you can do is reduce the layer pellets. You can ration it. You can give them only what they need, keep them hungry so they'll try new things. Another cool thing is with the fowl mix, or we do a scratch mix in the Livingseeds hatchery. It's a mix of chickpeas and lentils, and well, not lentils, chickpeas, sunflower seeds, mustards, wheat, a mix of high quality seed that actually is more of a treat for them. It's good for a health boost, but it's good for a treat. And you can use those to train your chickens to come to a call, or at a certain time of day when you tap a tin, they'll all come running. Wherever they are in the garden, they'll wait for that treat. You can whistle and you can train them with those treats. I hope that answers your question on the quantities of food. So you can ration it if you need to. Well, there's other questions, but I remember you had a question earlier, so I'll answer it.
How about the water? How much water does a chicken need?
So the chicken will drink water. The amount of water a chicken will drink will vary depending on how hot it is, how thirsty it is, what it's been eating. If it's been eating high moisture food like carrot leaves, it'll drink more water than if it's been only eating pellets. So it'll vary. So we recommend just always having fresh, cool water on tap. There was a question at the back. Yes, sir.
Does high performance feeds manufacture non-GMO feeds?
Does high performance feeds manufacture non-GMO feeds? So approximately 10 months of the year, the feed is GMO free. They contract the farmers in the area to grow GMO free soy and maize, as far as I understand it. There are times when they run out and they can't get this GMO free food, but locally that's the best option for us, and we do recommend it and use it.
The reason why it's GMO free is they export their food to African countries, and an import requirement of the animal feed is a GMO free certificate. So it's only like right now, this time of the year, where they start to run out of certain inputs, and then they can only source GMO inputs. There are two companies, there's one in Natal and there's one in Cape Town that supply GMO free foods. To get the food up here, it's just prohibitive.
Sure.
Okay. When you are breeding or having eggs specifically for your hatchery, do you add any vitamins and that sort of stuff so you get a healthier chick or not?
All right, so all our chickens are treated the same way. The birds we raise to sell are getting the same quality food, the same salads, the same vitamins. They're all treated the same way. So we don't give specific boosts to our breeding birds to produce better quality chicks or higher hatch rate. If we want all our birds on top condition, so the ones we keep, the ones we sell are treated the same. Hope that answers your question. Yes, sir.
I use pork trotters and things like that to attract flies to make larvae.
Yes.
Is that okay for the chickens?
So fly larvae for chickens, I'm not sure when you are producing fly larvae off of decomposing meat specifically. I would say it's probably not ideal. Where you're looking at using fly larvae for feeding chickens, that's the manure that's coming off grass-fed animals. It's very safe for them to eat. We would prefer for chickens not to scratch in dog manure or dog poo, so rather pick that up. They do tend to, if they're left to. It's a pathogen risk that you'd introduce that to your birds, introduce that to your eggs. Black soldier flies, however, are excellent for chickens.
I don't have them in the area. They sometimes come to my compost heap.
Yeah.
And I try and farm them with them.
So once you can build this black soldier fly farm, we'll be doing that in the coming month. We'll be building a black soldier fly farm. We'll be able to talk to it and put up a video in the future to teach you guys how to do it, because once you get it going, you can perpetuate it. And then you don't wait for a black soldier fly to happen upon your property. You can keep it going. It's a good strategy to feed your chickens because they produce high quality protein that's bioavailable to the chickens right away. Sorry, there was a question somewhere there? Yeah, yes?
Sorry, I just wanted to ask about vaccines.
Great.
How many, how long?
I want to come back to vaccines because that's not related to I suppose it is the basic care. So we vaccinate at day old for infectious bronchitis and Newcastle disease. So if you buy a chicken from us a day old, unless you ask for it to be unvaccinated, it's received the Newcastle disease and infectious bronchitis vaccination. At 8 to 10 weeks, we vaccinate for coryza, and we would vaccinate for fowl pox in mid-December, late January, if the mosquito load is high and we're noticing that it's been warm, a lot of mosquitoes, because mosquitoes transfer fowl pox from wild birds to chickens. So limiting the wild birds, limiting the mosquitoes, you may not have to vaccinate. We don't necessarily insist that home chicken keepers, backyard chicken keepers necessarily have to follow a strict vaccination regimen. Chickens, we would, if we didn't have this commercial venture, and Sean for many years, for 18 years I think it was, kept cooks without vaccinating. Unvaccinated birds, survival of the fittest, you keep strong birds, you keep healthy birds that don't require medication. Because of the context of our business, we have to vaccinate them, but we don't say you guys need to worry about vaccinating when you've got healthy birds in a clean environment, a diverse and nutritionally balanced diet. Shouldn't be an issue. Cool. Question in the back, ma'am? How do you introduce new birds? Cool, that's a cool question. Can I come back to that at the end?
Is there anything that you shouldn't feed to chickens?
Great question. There's a couple things that you shouldn't feed chickens, including avoskin. I'm going to run through them because I need to get onto the second part of the talk. Avoskins, avopips, chocolate, cheese, tomato leaves, ideally not green potato peels, potato leaves, any part of the brinjal plant. Dry beans. Dry beans, when they're still growing and they're fresh and green, is not an issue. Once they mature and dry, the toxin is most prevalent, and dry beans is one of the few things that can kill a chicken very quickly. A lot of the other things I've mentioned are more toxic, and it's a bit of a salt buildup or a caffeine or a sugar buildup, like chocolate, coffee, that sort of thing. But dry beans are a no-no.
Dry beans and lentils?
So there's a lot of misinformation, I think, on Facebook and other sources at the moment about lentils and dry beans. I think lentils are okay. Lentils are fine, but dry beans, if you cook them, it does break down the toxin to some extent. It's just not worth it. The beans have protein, so people are trying to offset their balanced diet with a cheap alternative. But if you're getting beans from the supermarket, you can know that they probably have insecticides laced in them, and you're feeding that to your chickens. You can know that they've got the toxin. You can try to break it down. Potatoes contain the toxin solanase. Now, boiling them it just about breaks it down. Roasting them and frying them is the high temperature needed to really do it. Potato skins that are not green are fine for chickens, but the green have the toxin, and that builds up. So with the beans, with that toxin, I don't think it's worth it. And some of the people talking about the beans are saying beans and pasta as a cheap, effective way to do it, because they're thinking protein and carbohydrates. That processed carbohydrate is like cook sisters for your chicken. It's just not healthy. It's not nutritionally dense or balanced for them. So dry rice, one of the last things to mention on food. Dry rice is probably not a good thing to feed your chickens because it absorbs a lot of moisture and can cause blockages in their digestive or their trachea and their crop. The crop's the word I'm looking for. Cooked rice is fine as long as it's hydrated. Okay, I'm moving on. The last section I want to cover is strategies for success. We've talked about strategies for success in terms of the housing to keep the wild birds out and to keep the rats out with the food bins. We've talked about the drinking nipple for water efficiency, for labor efficiency, for healthy, clean, fresh water for your chickens. But everyone's got a different goal with chickens. Some people for eggs, some people for meat, some people for the pleasure of it, for some people for pets, so some people for pest control. So I'm going to talk about these quickly while we've got a little bit of time, and then hopefully at the end have space for any further specific questions on this. So the first most common reason people come to Livingseeds Hatchery and they say, I want chickens that will lay eggs. And I politely don't ask them, can you help me understand which chickens don't lay eggs? Because all chickens hatch from eggs and all female chickens lay eggs. The only reason they won't is if they've had viral or traumatic damage to their reproductive system, and they won't be able to lay eggs. But that's an individual. All chickens lay eggs. But people want chickens to lay a lot of eggs. They want good layers. And right now, the most popular in the world are the commercial hybrids. The commercial hybrids, they lay well and then they don't. And they are a first generation hybrid or a specific cross that's been produced to keep consumers dependent, to keep the chicken farms dependent on the Highline Company and others. I'm not having a go at Highline Company. It's a solid business strategy, but we promote and believe in the heritage breeds, the sustainable approach to chickens. Highline's website, once again, not bashing Highline. There's value in their business, but Highline on their website talks about how their Highline Browns will lay 467 eggs to 100 weeks. 100 weeks, if you take into account 20 weeks to reach laying age, is approximately 80 weeks of laying. So you have a hen that'll lay for 80 weeks and produce 467 eggs. That works out to 5.8 eggs a week, winter and summer on average. And then it's done. Very few people will tell me how they've got a six-year-old Highline that's still laying an egg every now and again. Whereas with the heritage breeds, such as the White Leghorn, the best heritage breed layer in the world, will lay 6-7 eggs a week through winter, in their first winter if they're not molting. And they won't go broody. The eggs are larger, the eggs are fantastic quality, and they can breed pure, which means that someone on their plot or in their garden who keeps some hens and a rooster could have offspring that will have the same traits as the parents. It's not possible with a first generation hybrid of any breed. Right, so we believe in the heritage breeds. There's a solution if you just want eggs. You don't want chicks, you don't want meat. The White Leghorn is hands down the best layer. We then have 3 of which are available regularly from us. Dual purpose birds. Now, dual purpose meaning they're good for meat and eggs. They were historically used for meat and eggs. Since the broiler came about, I think it's in the mid 1900s, the heritage breeds fell away from popularity because the broiler is radically better at feed efficiency and creating meat. And the public likes a tender, soft, succulent chicken that's only 6 weeks old, still a baby. And that's what we want to eat. But for the sustainability sense, the best chickens for meat would be the Black Australope, the Rhode Island Red, the Light Sussex, and the New Hampshire. We haven't released the New Hampshire yet. We're increasing our breeding flock. But I'll tell you quickly a quick run through of what makes those the best dual-purpose birds. The black,
please.
The black. As I go through them, I'll repeat them. So the Black Australope is the largest. It creates a great big carcass of a bird. If you were hungry and you had a big Black Australope rooster, you'd be a lot less hungry. They do take 8 months to reach their good slaughter weight, really. They're slow to mature, and they eat a lot more food than a lot of the other breeds. The Black Australope is actually one of the best dual-purpose birds because it lays a lot of eggs. It competes with the Leghorn. In fact, the world record, in terms of recorded, is for a Black Australope some 60 years ago when it was developed, with 364 eggs from one bird in a year. Those birds were bred as an egg bird. Commercially in Australia, that's where they were developed, for shows, for competitions. Subsequently, they have somewhat been showbred to the point that they're larger and more beautiful, not quite as productive. They still take a long time to mature, so that's the drawback. The other thing is they've got black feathers and dark skin, so they don't look so appetizing as we all used to the pink, the white broilers, you know, the clean looking birds. The Rhode Island is a famous and well known for being a good meat and egg bird. It produces a really good carcass on a rooster about 6 months of age. It's got dark quills, so it doesn't look as clean as what we would be used to from the supermarket, but a nice carcass on a rooster at about 6 months. The drawback is that you're feeding a rooster pullet developer or hen food for 6 months to find out he's a rooster, because they're very slow to mature, and you can't really sex them before that unless you get really good advanced sexing, which we're trialing at the moment. So it's a bit of a lucky packet with whether you're raising hens or roosters for 6 months. The Light Sussex matures a lot faster. It shows up hens and roosters a lot earlier. It's got white feathers and light skin, making it our first choice for a dual purpose bird. I roasted one this last week in anticipation for this talk, and I sold it short yesterday when I talked about it, but on reflection it actually was good. It was much more slender than a broiler, but it wasn't that tough, and I ate it. It was about 20 weeks of age. So it's doable for a sustainability, homesteading, farm setting. The Light Sussex is actually good eating. The New Hampshire, like the Rhode Island, is darker quills. They're salmon colored. They don't really detract too much from the carcass. It matures really a lot faster than the Rhode Island, and the egg count, like the Sussex, is just less than the Rhode Island. The New Hampshire as a breed will be releasing later this year or early next year. It's an excellent bird, lots of good traits to it, I won't dwell on it for now. The last one for dual purpose I want to talk about is the Easter egger. Easter eggers are exciting because they lay bright, colorful eggs of different colors, and you never know what you're going to get for most of them in terms of the egg color. But they are actually, if you ask James at the back there, he'll tell you that it is the best and most tender chicken at 16 weeks of age. So it's got a good flavor, it's tender, and overall a winner. Am I right, James? Yeah, I'm right. All right, so they're good dual purpose. Morans, bred as a dual purpose bird in the French town of Morans. So there's not one Moran ever. It's one Morans, okay, because it comes from Morans. But they're bred as a dual purpose bird. And although now they're so rare and sought after for their chocolate egg color that not many people are eating them, the roosters are still good for that. Okay, dual purpose. In terms of an exclusive meat goal, you could look at the dual purpose breeds, but nothing is going to compete with the broiler for the fast maturation, feed efficiency, tender meat, all that early slaughter. They're more finicky to keep adults alive because they are more sensitive. People think you can't raise them outdoors, but we do on this farm. We raise them out on grass, on pasture for 6 to 8 weeks or so. And we have very, very, very low mortalities. They actually grow really well. They're healthier. Their meat is darker. It's tastier. It's just overall a great experience. However, the older birds are more sensitive than the heritage breeds to illness and climate and environment, so you have to keep them really clean and treat them like they're fragile. Cool, so we talked about meat, eggs, for the pleasure of it. Has everyone walked around the chicken cages yet? Who hasn't walked around yet? Have a look around the chicken cages. In these front cages for your eyes, we've got roughly 20 different breeds of heritage breeds, and they all look different. We've got white and black, we've got gold ones with lacing and arrowheads, we've got red ones, we've got white ones with black necklaces, black and white barred birds, all kinds of different chickens. Some people walk around and tell me the white Leghorn looks ugly, and I tell them you're wrong. But everyone has a different preference. People ask, what's the best chicken? And I told Sean that's what people ask. That's what I want to talk about. He said his answer is all of them are the best chicken for different reasons. And I say, yeah, I see what you're saying. All of them are so there's no one right chicken for anyone. Some people love the Kukooks with their barring. Others love the Polish crested bantams with their afros, Some love high egg production, some love the Sussex, which is pure white with the black necklace and tail. They look regal. I think they're gorgeous. So everyone's going to have different preferences. Not everyone likes a black bird. Not everyone likes a white bird. So when it comes to mixing and matching, who's going to stop you? You can by all means have a flock of every kind of chicken that we have if you so wish and you have the space. The chickens integrate well. The only thing that we would caution is don't introduce one that's different from all the rest. So we recommend either having a mix through and through, or even numbers of red and grey, for instance, black and white, barred and something else, because they recognize the differences. And it's a case of who are you and what are you doing here? Because they establish something called a pecking order, which is a term that comes from the chickens, a hierarchy. And there's some breeds like Boschfelders, which will always be at the top of the pecking order. And then Orpingtons, which will always be at the bottom because of their natures and how docile they are, how calm they are, how placid. So the pecking order is important to consider when introducing birds. If you start with 20 different day-old chicks, they'll grow up together, there'll be very few problems. The only problems we can anticipate is if you have two roosters. Two roosters can fight to the death, whereas one rooster doesn't really have an issue, and more than two, so 3, 4, 5 roosters, when two are fighting, there's usually a third one to say, hey, don't forget about me, I'm actually the main rooster here. So they usually break up the fights and divert the attention, so it's not just one being bullied, usually. Now, this is just a rule of thumb. In terms of colourful flock, for the pleasure of it, you can mix and match and do what you want. The same applies to colourful eggs. And there's no reason you can't do an overlap of colourful birds and colourful eggs, but you can have a basket like this. You can either have a basket like this in a month's time, if you can afford to buy point of lay birds of each breed, and we have, because we sell that all the time. But if you come weekly, we have breeds to produce all the colourful eggs hatching. Usually it's on a Wednesday. If you call after 2, we're able to tell you what we have, and you can tell us when you want to come. And if it's about like 10 o'clock the next day or 1 o'clock the next day at most, we can say, we'll hold them for you. But then if you don't come, first serve, the next person gets them. And this way you can actually design and plan the flock of your dreams. We can always assist you, but we can help you to achieve that. And where you save on the financial cost up front, you pay in labor, potential losses, food, structure, housing. The day-old chicks will need heat for the first 6 to 8 weeks, depending on the weather. Today, I'd say six weeks they'll need heat, but we're expecting 3 degree to minus 2 degrees this coming week. 8 weeks. Don't put them out before they're 8 weeks old, would be my recommendation. They need to have sufficient body mass and feathers to cover them and keep them warm. In nature, the mother hen would stay with them between 4 and 6 weeks, depending, and then she'll abandon them. Many people will keep chickens with a goal in mind that's other than the output, the eggs, the meat. So if you have a plot and you are wanting to have feral chickens, the barnyard chickens that are just going to feed themselves and take care of themselves, you're not worried about predators, you barely have to feed them, you barely have to remember to have water. Like such hardy chickens that in an emergency you have food, and occasionally you'll find a batch of eggs that haven't been sat on, you'll get some eggs. If that's your goal, the Boschfelders are fantastic, the Vendors are fantastic. A lot of the crossbreeds that we are producing, Easter eggs will be good for that. Leghorns are excellent foragers too. They're alert, they're predator savvy, and they're protective. The roosters will protect the hens sacrificially as well when they mature. So those breeds are good, and what you can always do is start off with a few hens that you like the look of, and a rooster that's going to bring something to the offspring. So you might start off with Easter eggs. You start off with colorful eggs, it's great. You put a Leghorn rooster with them, and the offspring will be better layers than their mothers because of the productivity of the Leghorn. And then their offspring, you eventually phase out your Leghorn rooster or house them separately. You can always put a Boschfelder in there. Then the offspring will get the traits of broodiness, hardiness, predator savvy, resilience to the weather. You can breed the traits you want into your flock. So there's always the mix, and there's nothing wrong with that. The reason we keep them pure is because someone's going to say, I want a Leghorn, I want a Sussex. We need to be able to talk to the traits. But you can always, in your own context, do what you want with the birds. Take the birds the way you want them to go. Others will keep chickens for profit. They will want to do what we're doing. Keep the Morans, sell the Morans. Be able to sell the Morans, you have to keep them pure to do that. So you either need housing to separate the breeds like we do, or you keep just the one breed and you focus on that. One of the drawbacks of keeping just the one breed is that any discerning individual will know that you are going to be biased and going to be promoting the one breed. One of the great traits about Livingseeds hatcheries, we've got 30 breeds that we can talk about, the pros and cons, and there's nothing to stop you from saying, well, I hear you, the Leghorn's a great layer, but I don't like it. I'll take this one. And you can hear the pros and cons of that breed. So being a single breeder can make you a specialist, but it can also set you up to be, seen as biased, if that makes sense. Some people will specifically want chickens that are quiet. They're in town or in a complex, and they don't want the loud birds because they don't want the neighbors to complain. And the Morans, the Rhode Islands, most of the Bantams, light Sussex and Wild Dotes are probably the quietest breeds we have, with the least noise made by the hens. Roosters are roosters, eh? They're still going to crow. And we talked about the crate on the rooster to reduce his noise if necessary. There's an overlap here with some of those. Moran, Silkies, Duclays, Orpingtons, Wyandottes and Sussex are amongst the most friendly or child-friendly. So families with young kids who want to keep chickens, don't go and start off with a Boschfelder. It's not going to be a pleasant experience. They're known to be more aggressive, more protective, and more likely to bite or kick you, especially the roosters with the kicking. Choosing the right breed for your goals is going to speed you up leaps and bounds in achieving what you actually are after with your chickens. A lot of people who are wanting to keep chickens for themselves, for their meat and eggs, also want the chickens to breed. Birds like the white Leghorns, they can produce fertile eggs, but they don't sit on them. So you will also have to consider whether you're going to get an incubator or if you're going to keep an incubator. One of those that are not affected by load shedding, that cluck around and still scratch and eat. And Silkies, Wyandottes, Sussex, Rhode Islands, Cooks can be broody. Silkies are one of the most broody breeds, and they will act as an incubator, regularly sitting on eggs, up to 5 clutches a year in warm climates. So your goals will determine the advice and how you achieve them. So those are the main strategies I wanted to discuss this morning to help you guys have an idea how to get started with chickens, the basic requirements that are needed, to touch on the different goals and how you'd best meet them, so that you don't go off starting with a pretty chicken while you want a productive chicken. You don't go for a productive chicken, then realize, oh, but actually there's pretty ones that I should have got. So chat to us here at the Livingseeds Hatchery. We will take your needs and goals into account and give you the best advice possible. Let's go to questions before we go to the giveaways. Okay, there was a question at the back. Can I go back to you first? Yes. Strategies for introducing new birds. Fantastic. I talked about this when we talked about introducing some odd bird to the flock. And one of the ways to do that, if you're able, is to either introduce even numbers of even sized birds and an even split in color. So if you can balance everything out, you can literally put them all together and they will squabble for about a week, re-establish a pecking order and settle. However, if you want to introduce one or two birds or different colored birds to an existing flock of one color, well-established flock, a strategy that I've recommended and had come back as a really good approach is to house them separately. And you have your new bird or birds in the enclosure, and one by one you introduce one of your old flock into the new flock. And once they're settled and established, you introduce another one of your old birds into the new flock. And that way they build the hierarchy around the new birds rather than the new birds being bullied by the existing pecking order. And not everyone has the space to do that. So I understand that there's limitations, but that's probably the best way to introduce one or two birds to a large number of birds. Cool. Sure.
Thank you. How do you limit the amount of food that they eat in the PVC farm?
So with the yes, so how do we limit the food? We in terms of blocking, is that the question? Yeah. Okay, so that we use the gutted down pipes, the PVC pipes with the angle, the 45-degree angle for them to put their heads in and eat. So we have a cap, a gutter cap that goes on, a wastewater pipe cap that can go on or in that to just block it off. It's neat. We previously used a black bag, one of these bags, and we stuffed it in there just to prevent them having access to the food. One of the important things I didn't mention, guys, is we've done this the way we've done it for convenience, cleaning and maintenance, for aesthetics, and for the overall impression that it gives. You can keep chickens in as fancy or more fancy or less fancy. You really, there's very little that limits you in how you can keep chickens. One of the things we would recommend is you consider convenience. When cleaning, when catching birds, when collecting eggs, you don't want to be crawling on your knees trying to get to the eggs that are laid at the back of the cage. But aside from that, it could be whatever you want it to be. The chickens are not very fussy as long as they have shelter, food, water, light and dust. That's important. Cool. Yes. I'll come to you next.
Don't eat all the food in the food tray unless I remove the top piece. It's the steel, it's not plastic.
Okay.
Why would that be? And then some of them, I give them the best feeding pellets.
Yeah.
I find one or two of them still eating their feathers. Okay,
so first question was about the feeders, why they leave some in there. And the second question was about why they're eating their feathers. So while they're leaving it in here, it might be to do with access. Is it got a strip across the top and no holes?
No, it's got holes.
Got holes.
But it's steel. So when I remove it, they finish the whole.
It's about access, more likely than not, especially if they finish it when you remove the top. So the reality is when we have these in the hatchery, we use these for the baby chickens. What we'll have to do is occasionally open the lid, remove any shavings, or if there's any incidental droppings, we scrape it out, and we either top it up or shake it about so that it's all even, and they continue eating it. So it's just the access to the way their heads are getting in. I assume it's older birds.
Yeah.
Older birds don't prefer these. This is not a great method for feeding chickens. We've got other gravity feeders like ours in the cages or in the hatchery. We've got the red and black trays. It gives much more access. Their big heads with the combs don't like these small holes. It's for small birds. About second question was eating their own feathers. That can be a sign of a protein deficiency at any point. It could be a sign of stress. It could be a sign of aggression with one bird bullying the others. If there's ever any blood or feathers that are quills that are regrowing after a molt, out of boredom or stress, they can start plucking and it can become habitual. So one of the things we'd recommend is if they're plucking the feathers a lot is you can use the blue terramycin spray to disguise it.
Just the feathers that are on the ground.
Oh, eating the feathers on the ground.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's less of an issue, but you just rake them out and clean them. So the feathers themselves can be eaten, can be fed to pigs or composted. I wouldn't promote the chickens eating their own feathers, so I would rake it out and compost it. Yes.
Which birds are ideal if one wants to learn breeding?
Which birds are ideal if one?
If I want to learn breeding.
So all of the birds are ideal for different goals. Now you're breeding for breeding's sake. Any of them, I mean, some of them will breed by themselves, like silkies. If you leave them, the Duclay bantams, the Barber Duclays, they will sit on their own eggs without an issue and they'll hatch a clutch of chicks. I don't know, there's not much that you need to do to learn breeding unless you have a specific goal. I think, talk to me afterwards about what your goals are. We'll talk about your specific breeding because all the birds breed, that's what we do. Was there a question here? Did you have a question, ma'am? White hat? Yes, eggshells. So the eggshells, the question was, is adding eggshells back into the chicken's food once you've used you've broken the eggs, you made breakfast or baked, can you add that back for the chickens? Yes, you can. Baking them in the oven is a good way to cook any residual egg so that you don't get a bacterial buildup. You can use bleach, hydrogen peroxide, or put them in the sun. But baking them is a quick way to do it. You crush it, feed it back to them. Generally, it's quite a nutrition. It's quite available to them, that calcium. Other ways to do it is you can soak them the KNF method. Or KNF method with fermenting it with a bit of vinegar. It releases the calcium and you give it back to them at a very small dose. I can't remember what you said it was. 1 to 500. So you can do vinegar-soaked eggs 1 to 500 in their water.
If you're doing the vinegar-soaked egg for chickens, use apple cider vinegar. It's far healthier than spirit vinegar for the chickens.
So cooked eggs, you can boil them, mash them. It's great to feed them back to them as a protein boost, especially in winter when they're losing feathers and regrowing them during the molt. We are over time. I'm happy to answer more questions after the fact, but because everyone's being so patient and there's prizes to give away, we're going to end this here and we'll do more questions after if that's fine.